Hello! Hi, my name is Peter Feza with Conquer Any Fear. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go over how to create a masterful plan. Now, you've already set your destination. You already have your vision. You already have your goal, whatever that is for you. You want to create an empowering life. You want to create an empowering relationship. You want to scale your business. You want to write a book, whatever it is for you. You already have your goal. So how do you create a plan to get from A to B? How do you close that gap? How do you take your idea from the imagination land and bring it into physical reality? What's the blueprint? Now, what a lot of people have asked me since I've been a coach for over 11 years, they ask me, how do you do that? What's like the best structure, the best way? Like, do you have a system? And I say, I do have a system, but the secret is not in the system, so to speak. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what you need to do in order to create a masterful plan, period. Now, what do you do when you want to create a masterful plan? You study the greatest planners in the world because success leaves clues. So all you do is you take the people, the most celebrated, successful planners that ever lived, you take their habits and their rituals and their skill set, and you take that and you apply it to your specific goal, your specific vision, and create success that way. Doesn't that make sense? So in order to do that, I'm going to tell you how one of the greatest planners ever lived did one of the most magnificent things that ever happened, and it happened in the last 150 years. And when you hear this, you're going to know exactly how to apply it to your life. So listen. There was a masterful planner. His name was Ronald Amundsen. He was a 38-year-old, and this was 1911. He was going to be the first in history to plant his flag in the North Pole. He just decided that. So for a full year, he planned meticulously. He got a crew together. He got a ship, and they were set out to sail. And right as they set out to sail, he discovered that somebody had already beat him to it. And he was just in a distraught state, but then he had this idea. He said, nobody's ever planted a flag in the South Pole yet. And there's already a crew, there's already a ship going to do that at the same exact time, a British ship. Robert Falcon Scott, he's a British naval officer. Him and his crew were going down the exact same time. And he said, if I meet him in Antarctica at the same time, I know that we're going to be able to beat him because of my planning. So as soon as he decided that he was going to compete against Robert Falcon Scott, one of the greatest races in history began. And the reason why I'm sharing you with this is because they had two completely different planning styles, two different completely styles of leadership. And it's in that contrast that we can see the lesson. And you can take these lessons and apply it to your life. I guarantee it. But they had one goal in mind. And that's to be the first in history to reach the South Pole. This is a story how a proper planning, meticulous planning, pays off, and how poor planning has its consequences. This is a story of life and death. Now, before Raoul left, he interviewed Eskimos. He interviewed experts. He interviewed people who have been in sub-zero temperatures, and he interviewed them, and he determined that the best course of travel was going to be by dog sled. So what did he do? As a master planner, he went and he got Inuit dogs from Greenland. He could have got Siberians. He could have got Alaskan Huskies. But no, he got Inuit Greenland Inuits, which are the best dogs in the world. And so he hired expert dog handlers. He hired expert skiers. He hired men who were skillful with their hands, who could create anything, who were used to creating in sub-zero temperatures. And Robert Falcon, he didn't do that at all. Instead of dog sled, he determined that the best course was going to be by motorized sledges, which is like this primitive snowmobile. He used some dogs, but then he got ponies, white ponies. And he hired men who he didn't trust at all, men who he could direct and order around. He had scientists come on board. They paid their way to be on board. He had researchers come on board who had no reason to be going to Antarctica. So as soon as the two ships landed in Antarctica, they had a whole season to prepare. So what did Ronald Amundsen do? He went to work immediately. He started building tents in a camp. He started digging burrows and tunnels under the snow and ice. He had equipment storage. He had a shed for modifying the equipment for a workshop. And he also had a one-man sauna. Of course, you're going to go to Antarctica, you need a one-man sauna. He started laying out depots between him and South Pole so he didn't have to carry all his supplies. So he could pick up food along the way, fuel. He laid out flags so if he missed, he would be able to see it clearly. He even laid out extra depots. And when he got there, he started modifying the gear. He got the best gear, the best goggles, the best boots. And he was preparing the whole time physically. Whereas Robert Falcon Scott didn't do any of that. They set up camp and they started watching research films at night, scientific films. He sent 3 men on a side mission to go get emperor penguin eggs and to bring back for research. And the men almost died. They didn't know what they were doing. It was so cold. They didn't prepare physically all season. They're eating delicacies. 2 completely styles of planning. But when the beginning of the season started, the race was on. And for Ronald Amundsen, the meticulous planning paid off. They were just traveling 5 hours a day, and the worst thing that happened the entire trip was that one of the men had an infected tooth that had to be extracted. That's it. Whereas Robert Falcon Scott, it was a completely different story. As soon as they started within 50 miles, the motorized sledges stopped working. That means that the poor ponies had to carry the extra 200-pound sledges by themselves. And every single hoof was going in the snow, one by one by one. It was painful. They were blinded. The pony's animal handler was so angry at Scott because his blatant disregard for the animals. He said it was an unrelieved nightmare. And as soon as the ponies got to the foothills of the Transantarctic Mountains, the poor beasts had to be shot. That means the men had to put carry the sledges by themselves, 200-pound sledges, 700 miles. And the men began to starve because he brought 5 men with him instead of 4, and he only packed for 4. The men were starving, dehydrated, their judgment was off, and they were just going one foot after the other for 700 miles. Finally, they got to the end, and they saw something, a little dot. And as they got closer, they saw it. It was the Norwegian flag flapping in the wind. And they saw this note by Amundsen. And it said that he'd already been there a month before. So the men, they started back, and it was even worse than when they came. Scott insisted that they carry an extra 30 pounds of geological specimens to carry back for research, so the whole trip wasn't for nothing. Soon after that, one of the men fell unconscious and he died. Soon after that, the pony handler, Captain Oates, he fell into a stupor. And he says he couldn't continue. He didn't want to harm the men, so one morning he said he was going to go out for a walk, walked straight into a blizzard, never saw to be seen again. And then Robert and the three other guys, they started walking. They walked a little bit more before they finally said, we can't do it anymore. They crawled into their tent and they died. And the only reason we know this is because they were writing in their journal the last moments of their life. And the thing is that they were only 150 miles away from base camp. 2 completely different styles of planning. 2 completely different styles of leadership. Now, from Amundsen, we can learn what can we learn from his situation? If you ask yourself, like, what about his planning was so masterful? He considered every single aspect of the journey. He got the best gear, the best dogs, the best course of travel. He relied on other people's expertise, not just his own. You see, it's not the structure that you use for your plan. It's not like you're going to get a new notebook and you're going to figure out how to plan, right? The new best thing. It's the planning that makes the masterful plan. Do you get it? It doesn't matter what structure you use. It doesn't matter what planner you use. It's the planning that makes the master. Like Dwight Eisenhower, he said, he's a general, and I believe he became a president. Oh, Lord. He said, when going into battle, your plans are completely dispensable, but planning is indispensable. So how can you use Amundsen's planning to your own life to become a master planner? Food for thought. This is Peter Fazer reminding you to conquer any of your fears and make your dreams happen now. If you have a comment or a request, or if you just want to say hi, or leave a comment below, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the video. Hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you again soon. Living your dreams takes time. It's a process. It's progress. So if you want to get the videos that I make here, if you like that video, and you want to get them before anybody else gets them, then subscribe to my channel. Or if you want tips, tools, and strategies before anybody else that you can't get on my YouTube channel, go to my website and I'll give you all that plus more. Leave a comment. Tell me what you're looking for. I'm here to serve you. Remember to conquer any fear and live your dreams.